the story of Job. And we sing about the patience of Job, and we talk about Job. But I've been thinking, I was reading, I've listened to the Bible through my earphones at work every day, and this come across the other day when I was reading, and I began thinking about it. And Job was a man, the Bible says he was perfect and upright. He feared God. And he was blessed, he was rich. He had thousands of camels, thousands of sheep and ox, and he had 10 kids, 7 sons, 3 daughters. And he was a man that was blessed. And he followed God, and he did what he felt like was right in the eyes of God. And Satan came before God one day, and God said, "Have you considered my servant Job?
Right.
He's perfect and he's upright, and he fears God." And we don't think about it a whole lot, or I don't anyways, about what does God say about us? What does God say to Satan about us? Before temptations come, I believe sometimes God says, "You've seen them because they love me." But I begin to think about Job, and sometimes we got to put ourselves in people's place to be able to really know what they were going through.
Come on now.
And so I was looking at this today, and I told you about some of the stuff that Job had. And so it came on the day after God said, "Have you considered my servant Job?" And Job said, he serves you. No wonder, you got a hedge about him. I can't touch nothing he's got. I can't touch him. No wonder he serves you. That's why he serves you. God said, "Okay, don't touch him, but you can touch his stuff." And so in one day, somebody came and they said, "Your oxen and your asses were out in the field, and the Sabians came and they took them away and killed your servants. I'm the only one left." And as soon as he gets done talking, there was somebody else that come and said, "Hey, your sheep was out here, and a fire from heaven came and took all those thousands of sheep away. And it killed your servants, and I'm the only one you got left." As soon as he was done talking, another came. And he said, "Your camels was out here, and 3 bands of Chaldeans came and took them all away." Now, can you imagine what Job's thinking right now?
Yes, sir.
I'd probably be standing there with my mouth open like, what in the world is going on? Because, Job's been sailing along pretty easy right now. Everything's going good. And then all of a sudden, people keep coming and saying, "You've lost your sheep, you've lost your camel, you've lost your donkeys, you've lost..." Now they come and say, "Your children were in the house together, and a wind came and knocked down the 4 corners, and it fell on your kids and it killed them." Killed them all. And I thought, could you imagine how devastated right at that minute that Job was? If something, now I ain't rich, I ain't got all this stuff. But if somebody come and said, "Your house burned down, and your van was sitting too close and it burned down," and before they could get done talking, then my boss calls and says, "Work slowed down, we got to let you go." And then somebody says, "Your girls was going to Seymour and they got hit and they died." Like, we got to put this on our level.
Yeah.
I mean, my stuff, yeah, I'm going to grieve over that. But when you touch my kids, that's when it's going to become real. Job lost all of it in one day. He had about 3 or 4 servants left and his wife. And do you know what he said? He said, "Naked came I out of my mother's womb, and naked shall I return thither. The Lord gave, and the Lord hath taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." I don't know that I would be that way, Titus. If all of that, if nothing but it was my kids. I don't know that I can have mine to thank and still worship God. But you know what? That's what Job did. And so he goes back. There comes another day when the sons of God are presenting themselves, and here comes Satan, and he said, "You consider Job? You moved my hand against him, and he still didn't curse me. Still loves me." And he said, well, skin for skin, you won't let me touch him. You let me touch him, you'll curse you. And so God said, okay, you can't take his life, but you can hurt his body. And so Satan afflicted him with sore boils from the sole of his feet to the crown of his head. If you ever had a boil, I've had one. They hurt bad. This man had them from the bottom of his feet to the top of his head. And his wife came and said, why don't you just curse God and die? Why do you keep your integrity? And so here sits Job in the ashes, all alone, holding his integrity with God. Now he's lost all his stuff. He's lost his children. Not long after that, he gets sore boils. And his wife said, why don't you just curse God and die? She lost all that stuff too. And now she's willing to say, you're the only person I got left, why don't you just die? So think about how Job is feeling right now. I can't even imagine the dark place that he had to be sitting in. And so Job's answer to that was, when his wife said, curse God and die, he said, shall we receive good at the hand of God, and shall not we receive evil? Job was willing to accept, if God sends this, I'm going to take it. If that ever happened, I pray I could be that gracious. But right now, I don't know that I am, to be honest. But the Bible says in all of this, Job did not sin with his lips. He was perfect before God. Now, if we put ourselves in that place, we have to look at our stuff. Kayla, you lose your house. You lose your job. You lose your car. You lose your mom. You lose your dad. You lose your brother. If we got to put ourselves into Job's position. I can't hardly imagine it. But the devastation that he had to feel. I've lost my parents. I've lost a sibling. I've lost all my grandparents. Never lost a kid. I pray I never do. I hope I see Jesus long before they do. But to imagine the devastation, and here he sits alone. The wife that he thought he could depend on ain't even willing to say, let's hold our integrity in God. And here he sits all alone. And then here comes his friends. When they first see him and they see him far off, they didn't recognize him. The Bible said they didn't even know him. And they cried and they rent their clothes and they threw ashes on their head. And when they got to him, they just sat down and said nothing for a while because of Job's grief. And they were grieving for him. But when they opened their mouth, all they had to say was accusing words. Now these are supposed to be his friends. And here he is in this position. And they said, did anybody ever, an innocent man ever perish? They're saying, Job, you had to do something to bring this on yourself. You had to do wrong. You had to miss God. You had to sin because this wouldn't have happened if you was perfect. And sometimes that's how people view us sometimes in our own lives. Something happens and people have to say, well, you have to do something. You brought that on yourself. But what did God say about Job? God said he was perfect. It didn't matter what the friends had to say. It didn't matter what the neighbors had to say. It didn't matter what the wife had to say. God said Job was perfect. And people can look at us and they can say, well, you did this. You know, when things start going bad, the first thing the devil's going to say is you got to be out of the will of God. Because if you wasn't out of the will of God, this wouldn't be happening. You had to do wrong or this wouldn't happen. You had to miss God or this wouldn't happen. And the first thing we do is start questioning, Lord, am I supposed to be here? Am I supposed to do that? Am I supposed to say this? Did I miss you when I prophesied? Did I preach the wrong way? What did I do to bring this on myself? And now sometimes we bring stuff on ourselves. I'm not going to act like I ain't never brought nothing on myself. I have. Like Titus said, sometimes I get my own self in the biggest mess. But sometimes Sometimes God is bragging about us to the devil. And he says, have you considered my servant? They love me. And they ain't going to hurt. They're going to hold their integrity. And so we got to realize that just because things happen, don't mean we're wrong. Just because bad things happen, don't mean we sin. It don't mean we miss God. Sometimes we're just being tested. And when we hold our integrity, God can still say, that's my child. They still love me. They're still holding their integrity. And so when we look at this and we see where Job is sitting, and we realize the devastation that he's in, what I really wanted to get to was Job chapter 16. I'm going to start in verse 1. Then Job answered and said, I have heard many such things. Miserable comforters are ye all. Shall vain words have an end, or what emboldeneth thee that thou answered? I also could speak as ye do. If your soul were in my soul's stead, I could heap up words against you and shake my head at you. But I would strengthen you with my words, and the moving of my lips should assuage your grief. So I thought, when I read that, I thought Job decided right then, in the middle of his trouble, I'm not going to be bitter at these people. Are they hurting me? Yes, they are. Are they making my pain worse? Yes, they are. But I'm not going to be bitter. And he said, if you was in my place, in other words, I'd strengthen you. If you was in my place and this had just happened to you, my words would make your grief less. And so sometimes we got to look at people and we got to say, what if that was me? How would I want them to treat me? How would I want them to look at me? Sometimes we're so easy to judge and we're so easy to point a finger. That's what his friends were doing. They were saying, you sinned. Titus, if you didn't sin, the dog pound would have been at your house this year. If Rachel, if you didn't sin, then you wouldn't have your trailer that you could see daylight out of. Because, so it's you too, so it's got to be all sinning. And when I'm sitting here saying it's easy for me to look at them. I don't know their whole situation. I don't know what goes on in their life, for the most part. And so when we look at people, we can be so quick to say, yeah, Matt's sinning, or that wouldn't have happened. Anya's sinning, or Joey wouldn't be sick. Like, the devil says that to us enough, without us pointing a finger at our brothers and sisters. David, let me read one in Psalms chapter 35. In verse 11, false witnesses did rise up. They laid to my charge things that I knew not. They rewarded me evil for good to the spoiling of my soul. But as for me, when they were sick, my clothing was sackcloth. I humbled my soul with fasting, and my prayer returned unto my own bosom. David said, you know what, you've accused me of stuff that I don't even know about. You've done me wrong. But when you was sick, I fasted and prayed. When I tried to help. And he said, but as for me, we can't control what people do to us sometimes. We can't control our situations. I can look through this church tonight when we was singing, Angelina was singing that song at the beginning, and I said, all my life, he's been faithful. All my life, he's been so, so good. And my mind went around this church, and I heard us sing, and it felt different. And I looked around at the people whose stories I do know, and I thought, here we stand, and we still say, all my life, he's been faithful. When things were hard, when things were dark, when people walked off and left, when people said this and that, stuff we didn't even know about. but they're saying that's what we did.
Yeah.
And still we stood here and we said, all my life, He's been faithful.
Yeah.
Because even when things are dark, I believe all of us has lived through some dark, black times. I do. But you know what? Even then, God was faithful, Brother Matt. Even then, He kept me when I could not keep myself. When I didn't have a song to sing. When I didn't feel like I could go another step. He was faithful. And I thought tonight, I don't know what made it seem different. Something seemed different when we sung that. All my life He's been faithful. And so David said, I didn't even know what you was talking about. You accused me of this. Job said, if you was in my place, I'd help you. They decided, I'm not going to be bitter. When I got the opportunity to pay you back, I ain't doing it. Because you know what? If we don't, God will take our part. God has a way of bringing people around. He has a way of doing it better than I can. When I put my hands into it, I make a mess. And so when we see each other every day, like I know most of y'all really, really well. I'm learning you guys. But like, you know, I've known Titus since he was born. I've known Joey's girl pretty much since they was born. And you know what? Like I know some of their story. And even if I didn't, all of you guys, when I see you out, if I see something and it don't seem to just right to me, I should say, I love you. Like Titus said tonight, I love you. It's going to be all right. It's going to be all right. Because you know what? I've been in that place before when I wasn't doing just right. I've been saved now for 41 years, I think. I wasn't always saved. And when I was, I didn't always do right. And I needed somebody to show me some mercy. And so when we look at each other, we got to show each other some mercy. I can't approve of some of what people do. That ain't what I'm talking about. We can't condone sin. But I can love you, and I can encourage you, and I can lift you up, and I can say, you know what, it's going to be all right, and we're going to make it. Like Titus said, it ain't the end of the world. I come up being taught, Titus, it's the end of the world. Yeah. You make a mistake, you're done. That's right. You go to hell in like 2 seconds. That's pretty much how they did. And, you know, we didn't know about grace and mercy and not a whole lot about the love of God. I would say for a long time before I really knew about the grace of God and the love of God and it's precious. Yeah. And it don't give us an excuse. Just because I've learned now that God has grace and He has mercy, that don't give me an excuse to say I don't care what God thinks about it. I'm going to do what I want to do. That's a little bit different. Because if we love God, we're going to do what He wants us to do. But when we look at each other, if we're not careful, our words can be sharp. Or we can get on our phone and say, guess what I seen so-and-so doing? I've heard people get on the phone and almost be excited because they got to tell somebody in another state what somebody was doing wrong. God help us. Because you know what, Titus? I want everybody to make it. Right. This ain't a competition. If you make it, that don't mean I don't get to go. Right. If you get there, Jennifer, before I do, that don't mean I ain't coming. Right. If you get closer to God and He uses me more than me, we're all, like Titus said, we're all in this together. Right. And I want everybody to make it. I don't want nobody. I don't care if it's my worst enemy. I don't want nobody to be lost. These people have done me some bad wrong before I went. Yeah. I don't want them to go to hell. Yeah. Hell's a real place. Think about it like this. If I was standing in front of a house and it was burning down and my worst enemy was in there, am I going to say I ain't calling the fire department? No, I'm not going to say that. Yeah. Like, I don't want to burn up in a house fire. I sure don't want nobody else burning up in a house fire. I don't care if they saved, I don't care if they ain't. I don't care if they've done me the worst wrong, I don't care if they made me cry the most. And so when we think about people, hell's eternity. They ain't going there for a minute and then getting out. It's forever. I don't want nobody going there, Titus. Because it's a serious thing. I thought there was a church I went to one time, and people got out of church and backslid. Now, I was never told this, but it was an understanding that if they got out and they was doing wrong, you didn't give a prayer request for them. They walked away. That's their problem. They're like your enemies now. You didn't talk to them. You didn't be their friends. It was the same way when I left that church. They were supposed to not speak to me. They weren't supposed to be my friends no more. Kind of crazy. But God help us if we do that. Because if you backslide, you're my brother and sister. And if that don't break my heart, how do I have the love of God? And so sometimes we got to put ourselves in another man's place. I've heard about Job most of my life. But unless I sit down and I put that in today's terms, and I put me there, what if I lost everything? What if I just lost my children? All of them right now. Do I want Rachel to come over and be like, no, sorry, you had to do some sinning or your kids would be alive? Nuh-uh. I'm going to want somebody to help. I'm going to need help. I can promise you, if I'm going to live through that, I'm going to need help. Job lost all of his kids, 10 of them. He loved them so much, Titus, that when they would have feasts at their house, when they were done, he would go offer sacrifice just in case they might have done something wrong. That's how much he loved his children. And for him to lose everything and then all of his children and his wife just curse God and die. And here he sits in pain, physically. His friends are pointing fingers at him. What if that's me? What if that was me, Titus? I need help. And you know, in this church, I feel like that we're kind of that. We're helping for each other. I believe that. You know, when we're struggling, we don't, unless you choose to, you don't have to struggle alone. Usually when I'm struggling, I kind of go off to myself, to be honest about it, and I don't say much about anything because I feel like I don't want to bother nobody. You know how we are. But I can promise you, you're not a bother. That's right. You're not. And so, and we've been there. You know, we've been through the church hurt, and we've been through people hurt, and we've been talked about, and we've been mistreated, and we've been put through it. And so if anybody knows how to have compassion, it should be us. My tongue should never shoot an arrow to kill one of my brothers and sisters. I should never say a word that's going to cause you to want it to be hurt or to want you to give up. We don't know. I've come to church before and been like, oh, I feel like this is it. And if one of you was to come and say something and shoot an arrow to me with your tongue, what if that was my last day? To some people, maybe it is. We don't know it. Everybody don't come in here. We come in, we put on our face. We know our church face. We know how when somebody says, you doing all right? We're like, oh, yeah, I'm good. How you doing? And inside my head, I'm like, forgive me, Jesus. That was a lie. Because we know it's the truth. We all know how to do it. We know how to play it off. But if we would, and we needed to, we could say, hey, can you come pray with me because I need some help? And I believe people would come. I believe that. I don't care if it's in the middle of the night. I believe that. And so let's look at somebody, even if they don't go to this church. I'm not just saying, oh, y'all, all of us. I'm saying people out there, the lost, the man that you met that had been in jail. What if that was you? You've been church hurt, you gave up, you ended up in jail. I had a brother like that, Titus. He got church hurt, felt called to preach. He had a preacher tell him, don't ever come back. The night he got saved, he had backslid, come back. The preacher said, don't ever come back to my church. I don't need you. He was out of church for years and years, got into drugs. I thought I'd lay at night and think, God, one of these days they're going to call and say somebody rolled him over in a ditch and let him overdose and die. And you all thought in my head, it's going to be that preacher's fault. He's saved now, and I'm thankful for that. But you know what? If that was my brother that Titus met, and he wasn't in church yet, how do I want Titus to treat my brother? Right. Because that's how we got to be. That's somebody's brother. The people that we see walk up and down this road that don't even know where they're at, that's somebody's kid. And somebody's mama's laying home crying at night, wondering, is their kid okay? Are they eating? Did they got a house tonight? It's cold outside. I used to grieve the worst over my brothers when it was raining. I had a brother that drowned in floodwater when he was drunk. And so when my brothers was out, they was on drugs, that was the worst for me, is them not when it was raining. And I'd be like, God, are they home? Are they? And I'd even call sometimes. Or I'd drive out by their house just to see if their car was in the driveway. And so when we see these people out there, we got to say, God, what if that was me? What if in my church hurt I walked away, and that's me walking up and down that road trying to cover my pain with a needle or with a bottle? Most of those people that do that, or that's what they're doing. They're covering up hurt, and they're covering up abuse. They're covering stuff up with, and it makes them numb. They don't feel it anymore. They don't think about it. And so when we see them, we got to say, God, that might be somebody's child, and their mama's home praying right now. Let me show them your love. Put me in their place. I could couldn't put myself in their place, but my family. And when it's your family, it's kind of you. Yeah. And so we got to say, God, I see my brother. Hopefully, if I come to Sunday school and I bite one of y'all's heads off, I hope you think, well, that's kind of unusual. Something must be wrong. I hope you don't just say, she's a hateful heifer today. Hopefully, that ain't my character enough so you can say something's wrong. And so I'm going to pray for her. I'm going to let her know it's really going to be all right. Because whether we mean it or not, some of us, I can include me in that, when I'm really struggling, I can be quick to snap at somebody, especially my family. You know, they get the brunt of it. You know how it is when you live with somebody. But we got to give people mercy. I don't care if they go to another church, give them mercy. I don't care if they don't go to church, give them mercy. Because some people are going through something. Some people, you know, Titus has talked about dealing with suicide. A lot of people in here have. And so we don't know if they're about to go do that when we just have a judgment and we turn our head and we won't speak to them, even though God's saying, tell them I love them. Treat them good. They need me. And instead we turn our nose and we walk away. If your soul was in my soul's place, if you sitting here in my seat, Job said, I'd help you. I'd strengthen you. And so we got to look at that and say, God, help me. It's easy to say it right now sitting in a church house. You know what? I'm going to do that. When I see people, I'm going to put myself in their place. But then we go out these doors. I've done it 100 times or more, probably more. And the preacher will be preaching and I'll say, well, you know what? I'm going to do that. And the minute you get outside, life happens. And then you see somebody and they need the love of God and you're like, I'm too busy for that. Hopefully I'll see them again. You know, there's been people I felt like to talk to one time and I didn't say anything. I'm real backward sometimes about talking to people. And that's really hard for me sometimes. And you know what? I never got another opportunity. And they slipped off into eternity. And I said, God, I'll let that opportunity slip away and I'll never get it again. It's sad. It's hard. when you know that maybe you could have helped somebody. And so let's give each other mercy. Let's give people grace, because we all need it. We all need it. I don't care if I've been saved 42 years, I've had the Holy Ghost since I was probably 18, I think. And I sing and teach Sunday school, whatever. That don't mean I don't need mercy sometimes, Titus. That don't mean I don't fall flat on my face sometimes. And so I need mercy. The preachers need mercy. The singers need mercy. The people that never speak need mercy. Everybody needs mercy sometimes. And if anybody knows where you could be at, it should be us. We know what we face. You kids in school know what each other faces. And so if anybody can help each other, it's you guys. Because you know what it is to face temptation. You know what it is to be made fun of because you don't do what everybody else does. And so be a help. Even if you see somebody fall into temptation, help them. Don't leave them struggling alone. Don't let them drown in the guilt. Reach a helping hand to. If you don't say anything else but I love you and I'm praying for you, we're going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Right. It's going to be okay. You don't have to say, now I know you sinned because I saw what you did. They don't need to know that. All they need to know is I love you and we will be all right. That's all I had on my heart. Y'all, let's just all come and pray.